structures, the markup structure hasn't changed really, except there are a couple of additions I'll talk about in a minute. Other than that, I mean, it operates basically the same, but there are quite a few additions, and we're up to version 1.1 beta 5, and we should have gone to 1.1 final a while ago, but circumstances prevented that. One of the I think most important things is that it does have at least crude font scaling. When you resize the window, let's find the slides.js. And the JavaScript, you'll notice, has gotten quite a bit longer. Well, maybe that wasn't obvious from before, but trust me, it's gotten quite a bit longer. And we ended up registering window on resize, fire the font scale function after a timeout of 50 milliseconds, excuse me. Yeah, 50 seconds. I think I'll wait 50 seconds to resize that. Yeah, I don't think so. As I say, it's very crude at the moment. I just sort of assume that you want 32 pixel text at 1024 by 768 and base all of the scaling calculations off of that. Not the smartest approach necessarily, but it's how it goes. There's the possibility, as I say in the comment here, I'm thinking about having the JavaScript look into the theme CSS, see what the font size was set to there in the CSS, assume that was meant for 1024 by 768 and scale from there. A little less crude, but not by much. Because I'm still making this assumption of 1024 by 768 as the target authoring, the target resolution, which has been true for many years, but you might start to, because this projector, for example, I think it starts at 1024 by 768 and goes up from there. But that's, how the font scaling gets managed. I also, in version 1.0, there was an assumption that slides were effectively atomic. Not like Atomic Betty, but atomic as in every slide was just, that was it. When you advance to the next slide, you got the whole slide, and then all you could do was leave that slide. In one of the early betas for 1.1, added with some help incremental display, which can be useful. You can either do it with the first thing showing by default or else not. Okay, so what drives that is actually, on the code side, it's a little complicated. On the markup side, it's pretty simple. And that's one of the driving goals in all of this. OK, here we go. So here's one of those incremental lists. Classed incremental, and in this case, also classed show first. OK, so any unordered list that has a class of incremental, the JavaScript goes in and marks all of the list items that are children of that list as you should incrementally display this. So instead of having to mark every single one of the list items class equals incremental, you can just do it at the top level. In theory, actually, you could do it up here at the slide level to make everything incremental. I haven't actually done that yet, so it'd be interesting. But the show first just means show the first bullet point by default and increment from there. Whereas if you just say incremental, when the slide comes up, none of the bullet points appear, and then when you hit the next spacebar function, the first time that first bullet point shows up. Now, you don't have to do it that way. You can class individual things as incremental. As an example, I have a slide that has a number of images where they're all classed incremental, so that they show up one at a time. There's actually, and there's another one. I'm not scaling images yet. That's, again, if I'm going to scale them, I'm going to have to start with an assumed resolution, and I guess 1024 by 768, but I don't know how much I like that idea. But you'll notice here in this theme, I'm using PNGs. I'm using translucent PNGs to get that sort of effect there. People who are familiar with web design will no doubt know that Internet Explorer for Windows, while it will display PNGs, will not honor their alpha channels. But in one of the, I think it was beta 3, but it was one of the middle betas, added in a behavior file that forces IE to deal with alpha channels in PNGs. And that's brought in through the JavaScript. Here's that example of incremental images. And you can actually, I mean, with this, you can do what's effectively crude animation. You can't make things swoosh across the screen, which to some degree I regard as a design bonus. But you can't. But you can have things appear a step at a time. Back them, and you can unspool them and bring them forward again, all under the user's control. So this, again, basically I came up with the structures that would be needed, and with some help from members of the people who read MeyerWeb, got help with the JavaScript that would dig in and assign the classes where they needed to be. And it's still OSF 1.0 compatible. Added some other stuff, like if you mark a link as being external using rel equals external, like this one, it will spawn a new window if you click on it. So when you're doing a presentation and you want to, now I don't have network access, so it's not going to find it, but you can see it spawned a new window to go to Derek Featherstone's example. And there's better slide handling. Other things that users contributed was things like if I type 8 and hit return, it'll jump to slide 8. And if I type, let's see, if I type 5 and hit the space bar, it'll skip forward 5 slides. And those were things that users contributed again. And a late addition was one of the things that I had to do was make it so that mouse clicks, if a mouse click happened within the context of either an embed element or an object element, S5 would ignore it, because otherwise, when you clicked on an embedded movie to try to pause it, you would get advanced to slide. So that was another case where is parent or self was really helpful, because I could say, hey, are you or any of your ancestors objects? Yes? Fine. Okay, I'll ignore that mouse click. So you've got all that fun stuff. One of the other changes that I made was at the markup level, and that was to add these configuration parameters. You can change the default view between slideshow and outline. This was done once I realized how many professors were trying to use this for their classes. So they could do the slideshow in class, if that was what they really wanted to do, and then change the default view to outline, put it up on the website, and then, it would just stay in outline view on the class server. So the student could come and actually look, instead of having to go through a slideshow or think that they had to go through a slideshow, they could just go through the outline. And then if they wanted to see it as a slideshow, no problem. Just toggle over to the slideshow view. The other one is the control visibility, whether or not you want it hidden by default. You can set it up so that I think it's visible is the other. Oh, whoops. I need to put that back to slideshow. So by default, the controls can appear, like the little button controls, and then stay there, basically. So if you, as the author, want that. Now, these are the defaults. The defaults are slideshow and hidden because that's what I like. So that's what I define as the defaults. The reason that I put these in the markup, actually into the markup, is that these are what I regard as effectively runtime parameters that the author of the presentation is going to want to set. Let's say an author wants their controls to always be visible on their particular slideshow, and they want that particular slideshow to default to the outline view. I could either do that in the markup, or I could do it in some embedded JavaScript that then the rest of the JavaScript would pick up. And this, frankly, seemed much easier to document, because anyone who's writing one of these presentations is probably going to know XHTML. Otherwise, you're not going to be writing one of these presentations. But they might not know JavaScript. There are plenty of people who write web pages who don't know JavaScript. And many of them may, in fact, be professors. Not to denigrate them, as I only know JavaScript because if I didn't know it, I couldn't have done something like this, basically. So the advantage for me was, this is something that, as a presentation author, I'm going to want to be able to control. Because my only other option besides that, or embedding these parameters into the JavaScript in the document, was to have some lines in the actual external JavaScript that had to be edited, in which case, if you wanted to run multiple presentations off of that same UI directory, then they would all be forced to the same setting, which you might not want. Because the way the file structure is set up, because this is a beta, the UI directory is actually called v11b5, but this is usually a UI directory. You could have an arbitrary number of presentations at this level here, all sharing the same UI directory. Which, again, although I didn't intend it for this purpose originally, it turns out to be great for a professor who's putting up presentation outlines, presentation slideshows on a server. That's really nice because they can just have all their presentations in one directory, and they all share the same user interface scripts and style sheets, rather than having to have, for every presentation, a whole new copy of the user interface stuff, which they're probably never going to change. But just in case they do want to, that would be really useful. Now, there are a couple of bugs still, and if anyone has any insight, I'd love to talk to you about them. Number one, Safari in outline view ignores page up and page down. I have no idea why. I, in fact, restructured the entire key and click handling so that in outline view, the only keystroke that S5 ever pays attention to is the T key to toggle back to the slideshow view. Other than that, it lets everything pass through to the browser, and yet I can't do page up and page down in Safari. If anyone's encountered something like that before, please, God, let me know. The other one is, and it only seems to happen with this theme, at least at the moment, is Firefox for Windows, not for the Mac, but for Windows. The footer has sort of this nervous twitch. When you rescale the font, it kind of moves up and down for a minute. And it's really annoying, and I can't figure out what it is. And I thought at first, oh, geez. I think what it's doing is, when you resize the window, it's rescaling the font, and then it's interpreting that as a window resize, so it's rescaling the font again, and it has rounding errors. That's actually not it. It's only calling the font scaling routine once, so that means it's not reloading the window. So I don't know what it's doing. Again, if anyone has any insight, I'd love to hear them, because I'm stumped. I've been working on that for a while, but this is, it's still Opera Show format 1.0 compatible. I did make a few changes, so that people who download this and look at it, they say, ooh, controls, that sounds cool. No, please don't touch this, because the JavaScript takes this, takes the element with the ID of controls and overwrites the contents. So anything that a user puts in here, in either of these elements right here, is just going to get overwritten by what the JavaScript does. So I thought I'd throw in a warning or two. But other than that, it's still basically the same markup. And actually, one of the features I forgot to mention before that's sort of stealthy, yes, I know you can't find the server, I'm not on the network, I got it.